MMA Rants and Raves, UFC 113. Lyoto Machida versus Mauricio Shogun 2. Guys, I got one thing to say after watching this fight. Wow. This is by far one of the most shocking endings I have ever seen in a mixed martial arts battle. I mean, a lot of people expected a lot of things from these two fighters. After seeing the first fight, a lot of people predicted that Machida win the fight. A lot of people predicted that Shogun would win the fight. But nobody predicted this. This was just absolutely shocking. People expected a war. Both of these guys' game plans were going to change. They were going to adjust based on the things that they did the first time. Maybe add some things, maybe take away some things. And it was going to be more focused. They're going to be tougher in the fight. They'll take it more to their opponent. Maybe they'll do what they did the last time, but maybe tweak it a bit. I mean, it just totally shocked me the way this thing ended. I just couldn't believe it. And there's something else. It's this guy Machida. You know, the way he came in with such dominance, 16-0, never lost a mixed martial arts fight. The guy resembles like this kung fu master you see on television. He's like the greatest mixed martial artist since Bruce Lee. Kind of character that you see in a video game. The way he moves, he's so quick. The least touched fighter. The guy who never gets hurt, who doesn't show any cuts or bruises on himself. He's like this guy that's one of the immortals that you see in comic books. And you want to have that feeling. He has that aura about him. You know, of course, in the last fight, he didn't look that way at the end, but, you know, still, I mean, he wasn't totally destroyed. He looked cut up for the first time, and he looked hurt. But you don't hear about what happens at the end of the fights with the surgery and all the off-season talk. Well, off-fight talk. There's no seasons in this game, but it's just interesting the way you have that feeling. He's the immortal, and he's fighting the mortal. Shogun looking very mortal in his career. Guy who had his shoulder broken against Mark Coleman, got destroyed in Mark Coleman won that first fight. The second Mark Coleman fight, he was gassing out at the end. Looks very mortal. Rear naked, choked by Forrest Griffin. So, you know, this is a guy that can be hurt. He can be submitted. He's had surgery. He made this big comeback. And, you know, that's just what it was. The immortal against the mortal. And in this fight, the way this ended, the immortal looked like the mortal, and the mortal looked like the immortal. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You know, let's talk about the fight. Seconds into the fight, you know, Shogun right away throws a leg kick. Wow, you know, this is like deja vu again. You see Machida backpedaling, deja vu again. The guy who was always backpedaling, trying to get away and come back in and counter. And then he hit Shogun with a left. About 336, Machida takedown. But Shogun gets right back up again, and what does he do? Right away, against the cage. Press him up against the cage, and that's the key with these two. He's the stronger fighter standing up. He's just a physically stronger guy. He's able to push Machida against that cage and start throwing the knees. And then, about 240, another takedown, right? And this time he actually does something with it. Machida actually gets some elbows. He did a little bit of ground and pound, not much. His takedown defense is very good, Shogun that is. And then what happens? They get up again, and the same thing. He's able to get Machida against the cage because the area where he took him down was near the cage, and again starts throwing the knees. So again, there's an escape. And on the way up, you know, he throws that knee, and it was hard to tell if it did any damage. You see Shogun, he always, you know, puts his hands like that. Like, I think maybe that means nothing happened to me or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, you see them engage in some kind of punch, and it just seemed that Machida's went too high and Shogun got all of it. He hit him right in the temple. That got him down, didn't knock him out, but then he got full mount. That's what a smart fighter Shogun is. When he lands on the guy that's already down, he made sure to get that full mount. And when he got that full mount, it was just ground and pound. It was either the first or second punch that really completely knocked him out. And I couldn't believe it. I had my mouth hanging open. I was so surprised how this fight ended. And, you know, it was just, the reason it's so surprising is because you have this guy who has the aura of the ultimate mixed martial artist. Like he's not somebody that's like human that's in there. The only guy that doesn't make mistakes, of course, is Fedor. The guy never makes mistakes, or mistakes that can actually hurt him to lose a fight. Here you have a guy, who was in very close contact with a premier striker, not only misses his punch, which was a sloppy one, it goes over the punch that Shogun landed, and he got all of it. So he wasn't evasive the way he was known to be, to get away from that, and he just got clicked, he got a hit, and he got full mounted, and there was nothing he can do. And you can't afford to make mistakes like that. And maybe that was what happened here in this fight. It just seemed to be that Machida thought that if he's more aggressive and tries to strike with this guy, which is not what he usually does. This is a guy who goes in and out, in and out. He'll engage, but he'll start backpedaling and getting away from you and get you into a trap and then throws combinations when you don't expect it. Patience is his virtue. This is what he depends on. And that's how he excels in fights. And that's not what happened here. It just seemed to be he was too aggressive. But guys, I was just absolutely shocked at this ending. I just couldn't believe it. And here's the deal. For people that follow Machida and like Machida, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You have to understand how bad this was and how dominating it was of how Shogun beat Machida. I mean, it was a total annihilation. I mean, you're talking about, it wasn't even TKO, it was KO. A guy like this, a guy like Lyoto Machida getting KO'd, with 335 in the first, that's like unbelievable. I mean, a complete domination, a complete destruction of Lyoto Machida by Mauricio Shogun. I mean, I don't know who would predict this. If you would tell this to anyone, that this is what Shogun would do to Machida before this fight, you would probably think they're nuts. I mean, it was really unbelievable. But here's the deal. If you like Machida as a fighter, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And the light at the end of the tunnel is, if you looked at the fight, there were two things here which were a bright side for Machida. Those two takedowns, you have to look at that. He obviously is a superior wrestler, and he should have stuck to that. I think that game plan would have helped him. The problem was he was getting up. So he has to learn maybe better control, do better ground and pound, and nobody can learn better than this guy. I mean, he's like the complete mixed martial artist. So, that's what he should focus on, his wrestling, because it seems that Shogun, to his credit, how good he is, he does have trouble with wrestlers. He did have trouble with Mark Coleman in those two fights. Two very good fights. And, this was a Mark Coleman, more in the twilight of his career. Coleman took him down many times. Shogun was gassing at the end of that fight. So I think that's what he should stick with. Try not to strike with this guy. We know Machida is a very good striker, but Shogun is just better. It's just the way it is. If you look at the two fights, he was throwing all those leg kicks, and it just seemed that Machida's striking doesn't have much of an effect on Shogun. I know it's shocking to hear, but you can see it. Look at the guy after the two fights, and look at Machida after the two fights. Even that body kick, before he hit him, and when he got up, it just seemed he backpedaled, but just came back. It didn't even seem much to stun him. And, Shogun is just a better striker. So if he's going to handle this guy, if these guys are ever going to face in the future again, or if he's going to deal with really good premier strikers that are quick, a guy like Anderson Silva, he should go for his wrestling. He did get the two takedowns. That's the way I see the fight. It was really interesting, and of course it was completely shocking. I would love to hear your thoughts about this fight and all the other fights that took place in UFC 113, a great card. Please leave your comments, rate this video, please subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.